Welcome, everybody, to Who's Your Band? I am Jeffrey Paul. I am joined by my co-host, Sean Morton. How are you, Sean?
I am beyond phenomenal, Jeff.
Beyond phenomenal.
That's all I have to say about that.
Why?
In a great mood. Don't fucking ruin it is what I'm trying to get at.
Listen, you know I'm going to say something to ruin it. By the time we're done, everyone on this podcast is going to hate me. But
I'm sure. I don't even know. Listen, you asked me who the guest was, and I do not know who this gentleman is. I need you to bring me up to speed because, a lot of the times we know, both of us know who the guests are. I'm in the dark here. I want to know.
All right. So a lot of people sometimes, Sean, say that I'm a Renaissance man. I can't hold a candle to this guy. Okay. Our guest today is a comic. He's an actor. He's an author. He's a radio guy. And he's a club owner. And he's a heck of a nice guy. We'll introduce him to the show. Jamie Roberts. How are you, Jamie?
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that, Jeff. Thanks, man.
This is what I remember.
You, Sean. Nice to formally meet you, Sean. Nice to
You as well.
Sean's a comic as well. You know what I remember about Jamie is he used to put on one of the best Sunday night shows, one of the best shows in New York City. It was called Sunday Night Live. I still even have the T-shirt from those.
Wow.
And I think it started out at New York Comedy Club, but I think it really grew when you brought it to Broadway. And
man, that was amazing.
It was, man. And you were very nice enough to give me spots on that show because I always wound up hosting or doing spots on the 11 o'clock on Sunday night. So it was great. I was able to get a couple of spots and go downstairs, do Jamie's show, go upstairs, do the 11 o'clock house show. And Jamie was always a nice guy, but he had great acts on every show they did, but he never made you feel like you were less than.
Thanks, man. Thanks. And, you're not the only one who says that. And that's kind of like the atmosphere of the kind of, how can I say, that's the feeling I want people to get to know about Jamie Roberts. Is like, I know we're all on this journey as trying to be the funniest guy in the room. We're trying to perfect our craft as far as comedy is concerned. And some people, there's levels to it. You know what I mean? So everyone is not going to be a headliner. Everyone's not going to be a feature. Everyone's not going to be a host. But at the same time, don't treat them like a bringer. Don't treat them like a new comic because just like everybody else, they have to start from somewhere. You know what I mean? And you're absolutely right about that Sunday night show. That Sunday night show, man, there's a lot of comedians that went through that show that you probably see on TV now.
I remember doing shows with Sam Morrell on that show.
Yeah, Sam was on there.
Dante Nero was on that show. Yeah. There was a lot of really comics.
Chris, the Stefano. There's a lot, man. It's a lot. Damian Lemon. And it was like what we call, even though I was a black guy running the show, it wasn't a black show. You know what I mean? It was Sunday Night Live. We like to call it was like a mixed culture type feel. The only prerequisite was you had to be funny. You know what I mean? You had to be funny. That was it. And you had to respect the craft, respect the audience. So, we started off at New York Comedy Club, like you said. Al Morton, rest in peace to good Al. He gave me a shot to do it on a Sunday night. And I said, all right, let's try it. And then it started growing. And he said, hey, how about you bring it over to Broadway? I see the acts that you're putting up. Because these acts weren't working at club at all. You know what I mean? Like they weren't regular acts at Broadway or New York Comedy Club. And so when they would come and see them on Sunday, it was like a big deal. I had Mike Epps there. I had, it was something different than what was the norm of Rich Brooks booking it. You know what I mean? Not to take anything away from Rich Brooks, but those were the different type of acts that I was bringing in. And so when it grew to that level of you got the big room at Broadway Comedy Club, because I told him if I was coming to Broadway, I wasn't going to do the upstairs room. Didn't make sense, So I said, give me the downstairs and let me see what I can do. And I mean, as you saw, it was a good night. The street team helped out a lot. Shout out to those guys. They used to sell tickets and lie all weekend long. Yeah, they got Chris Rock in there every Sunday night, man. But it grew.
How many years did you do it? Because to me, that always seemed to be like a staple show in New York City. Yeah. And when you talk about New York City comedy and making that statement, that's really saying something.
Yeah, man. We ran that show for 10 years. Every week, 10 years. A weekly show for 10 years. I started off as Esteban, Tino. You remember Tino? Tino Romero, Esteban?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so I started the show off with him at New York Comedy Club. And then he quit after our second canceled show. So within 10 years, we only had 3 canceled shows every Sunday. One of the canceled shows was Super Bowl Sunday, and I told him don't do it. No one comes to a comedy club on Super Bowl Sunday. He went ahead and did it anyway. They canceled the show, and then after that, he quit. And after he quit, that's when it really took off because I had so many ideas that I wanted to do, but when you're working with someone who doesn't see the vision and doesn't really understand, the way you want to move, it kind of holds you back, it kind of handcuffs. And it was I don't want to say it was my dream. You know what I mean? It was my baby child. It was my thing that I developed. And to have someone telling you, I don't think so. I'm like, man, you got to see the bigger picture. It's bigger than just booking our friends. It's, actually being able to network. You're at a real comedy club. This isn't a dive bar. You're able to get your name in certain circles that, that'll help your career. And you're able to get on stage every week. This is what we're fighting for. You know what I mean? In front of a real crowd.
You bring up something that is kind of interesting here. And I kind of look at it in twofold. So you use the word vision. You have to have vision. But at the same time, as comics, we have to live in the moment. So how do you able to kind of like separate the two? Have that vision for what you want to see in the big picture, but at the same time, live in the moment and do what you have to do to be successful in the moment.
Well, you start with an end goal. That's why. You know what I mean? When you start a comedy, it's not like, hey, I just want to do dive bars. I just want to do open mics. If you have a vision or you have an understanding of where you want to go with your career, then you know how to get there. You set a path and how to try to get there. I'm not, let me give you a little bit of background as well. So I graduated with an accounting degree from Hampton University. So I come from a structured background. A lot of our comedian friends, this is all they do. They don't understand, they don't understand how to get to the next level in life. Plain and simple. They're living on somebody's couch, not to knock that, because I did it myself, but it's just that they don't understand what it takes to get to the next level. And when you're working with people who don't have that vision or understanding, it kind of holds you back from getting to the next level. So if you're, like they always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. You know what I mean? You never want to be the smartest person in the room or the smartest person in your crew because you can't really grow that way. There's no one to challenge you. There's no one there to challenge you to actually try to do better. So, that's what was kind of like handicapping the show. And once I left him, I started to flourish. There was a couple of things that actually happened to help the momentum of the show move forward.
Hey, Jamie, did you always have that entrepreneur spirit? Because I mentioned at the top that you also own a club. So did producing for 10 years your own show, did you always have the vision of wanting to open up a comedy club, or was it something that kind of like fell in your lap? How did that all come about? And tell us a little bit about the club.
Well, I didn't have a vision to actually open a club. I wanted to run my own space, and running the show for 10 years, I got to see a lot of things, and some people just show up, perform, and leave. But I was there. I was taking notes. I was paying attention. The 2-drink minimum. I was like, how are they making money if they're letting people in for free? Then you're seeing it's the food and the drinks that's really making the money. The ticket is just to make sure people show up, right? And then it's the acts. It's the networking. It's a lot of things that go into it. It's the other things that happen during the day. I went there one day and it was recording something for a Jewish commercial, and everything was in. I was like, what is going on here? You know what I mean? But I just walked in just to come pick up a check or something and just to see that there's money being made at a comedy club on off times. When you think they're only telling, jokes at night. No, there's other revenues to be of other streams of revenues that are being made when people are not even paying attention. So one of the big things, I tell this story sometimes, we could tell it. So we did a Memorial Day weekend show. So my show was on Sunday. Memorial Day weekend is normally a big weekend for comedy. It's a lot of people in town, and we normally get a recap of the weekend via email, Hey, Jamie, this and that and this. This time they put me on the wrong email. And I actually got to see how much money the clubs made. Because at this time, Al owned all 3 clubs. And I actually got to see how much.
He owned New York. He owned Broadway. And he had the World, right?
Greenwich, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to see how much money they made off of a weekend of doing comedy shows. And it was like, I walked out of there with like $300-400. I was like, this is a drop in the bucket to what the hell they just made on a weekend. I mean, like a weekend is retirement for some folks. You know what I mean? Right. But of course, there's expenses that are attached to that as well. So, you see the income that's coming in for shows. And, the Sunday show, 9 o'clock, sold out. All right. It was sold out. They added another show, 11 o'clock, right behind it. There was a 5:30 show or a 6 o'clock show before it. And so you have to think like all that revenue is coming in and it's coming into the pot. And that was just for one club. So imagine what was going on at New York Comedy Club, what was going on over at Greenwich. And that's a weekend. We have 52 weekends. Al
was great.
He built the machine.
Yeah. He was a very good businessman. I see. Al and I used to drive him from Staten Island into the city. And he was very, very good to me. I would drive my car to his house. We would take his Cadillac into Manhattan. He had a parking spot, which was great. He paid gas and tolls. I would go and do spots throughout the city. I would end up back at Broadway. He let me close the night out at Broadway, and then me and him would grab something to eat. And we did this maybe 2-3 times a week. So I really got to know him and pick his brain about business.
Yeah, man, he's a good guy. He was a real good guy, man.
Calculating everything to the penny. When you were talking about how you would stick around and watch, you know who you reminded me of? Do you know who Michael Bivins is, right?
Michael Bivins?
Yeah. He was in New Edition.
Oh, yeah, the singer. Yeah.
Yeah, so he didn't want to just be, he was a singer. He was one of the guys in New Edition. Ralph and
he wanted to be the business guy. Right?
Yeah. Bobby Brown was they were really like the real talent and they were in the forefront. But Michael Bivins was the guy who wound up becoming the most successful because he produced shows. I got to work with him. And he was really, really interesting, focused, business-minded guy. And it reminded me a lot of you because, again, you're in the moment now, but you're looking for the next step going forward.
That's right.
Did you always have that entrepreneur spirit?
Yeah. I sold weed in college. That's part of it, right? It was always part of me. Like, what I've learned, especially with comedy and with entertainment, is that you have to create your own. If you're waiting around for someone to put you on, you're going to keep waiting. You got to keep waiting for someone to call your name. You got to keep waiting for someone to call your phone. You want to be prepared, but the only way to be prepared is if you stay in the gym, right? You got to stay working. You got to stay on stage. And I learned that if I had my own, right, I didn't have to wait for someone to put me on. I didn't have to wait for someone to give me a show because I had a show I was doing every week. It's always like, it's kind of like you have a home. You made a home for yourself. You have a base for yourself now. And now from that base, you can do whatever you want. I've made so many relationships from that show, that Sunday Night Live show that still exists to this day, that I can go on tour with people, but I choose not to, of course, but because there's no real money in that unless you're the headliner, unless you're going to be driving them around and, picking up donuts. Nobody wants to do that anymore. But yeah, that it was always in me. Like, I learned from a very early part of my career that I can't do bringer shows, right? I learned that, burnt out from doing that nonsense. And I can't accept just any and everything that's put in front of me. So there was times where people were like, "Hey man, you're funny, you want a headline?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I only got 7 minutes. What am I doing headlining?" You know what I mean? Like, but it's kind of like, it's like, at that time in the game, you didn't know any better. You had to learn. So you have to sit back and observe, understand the art of comedy, and pay your dues. You got to really pay your dues. Those people who skip the line, you see that, they're no longer in rotation. It's the truth.
I think this is a lesson that more comics need to learn. Sometimes I have to be reminded it myself. Know your worth.
Right.
How many times have I told you this?
Exactly.
There's a million people. There's a million people that I can work for that I flat out refuse to work for.
Good for you, Sean.
Just because I know my worth.
Good
and
for
I would
you,
rather
bro.
sit home on my couch on a Thursday night than be offered to drive 200 miles one way for $150 spot. Sorry, I got a full-time job. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm good. I make my own decisions. You know what I mean? Like, knowing your worth is one of the most important things Jeff has ever said. It truly is, because people don't understand that we have to fight and claw in the very beginning to get to that next level. Then once you get to that next level, you're still fighting and clawing because the people behind you are right on your fucking ass on top of it.
Right.
It is a hard ass fucking business. It truly is.
But you also have to figure out you have to figure out your lane, carve out your lane.
So that's true, because not everybody has their own story too. Like, everybody has a different pathway too. You know, I mean, Jeff's doing this what 20 years or so.
I'm not even in it 20 years. I'm close to 20 years, but not even 20. Like,
so me too. I'm close to 17. But you know, I can count on two hands how many city shows I've done, like weekend wise. So I was always on the road. Some guys don't. Some guys didn't go on the road for 10 years out of the city, you know, so there's no two paths are ever the same with that.
Correct.
Yeah.
You know?
So out of everything you do, Jamie, okay, what do you love the best? I mean, you talk about knowing, you just said picking your lane. You're in like 6 different lanes. You're a comedian. And not only a comedian, I think you're a very sought after host. It seems like if you're on a show that you're hosting, that seems to be kind of like a cachet type of show. Like, if you seem to host for a lot of like big events. You do a lot of corporate, I think, if I'm not mistaken. You wrote a book about comedy and getting started in comedy, and right. You work in radio. Do you still work in radio?
Yes, I do. Work 597 WBLS.
Okay, and you own a club. So how do you stay in your lane? And out of everything you do, what do you love most?
I love hosting shows. So when I first started, right, you had to pick your lane. You had to figure out what you wanted to do. So I learned early in the game that hosting shows. Hold on, my son is interrupting my. Give me 1 minute. I love being a father as well. That's another
thing. You're a family man.
Yeah. So I'm married. My boss is Nikki Sunshine, my wife, and she's a comedian as well.
She was also someone who used to produce a show, I think, on 8th Avenue. That upstairs is an Irish bar.
That's right.
And she could give me stage time on that too. Yeah, she was lovely.
Yeah. But I love hosting shows, and I've kind of carved my way out to be a sought after host here in New York City. So I've hosted galas, I've hosted, award shows, I've hosted comedy shows, and that's real money. You know what I mean? So comedy pays you what you put into it. So you could be the funniest person in the room and getting paid the less amount of money, but you just have to figure out what's your lane. So people hire me to host events that they know they need entertainment. They may not want a funny headliner to do 45 minutes, but they know the host is going to carry the show and will make it a great night for everyone involved. And that's what they pay me for. So that's what I love doing the most. The club ownership, it's a lot. You know what I mean? Like it is taxing, but it's also rewarding because the other thing that I love doing is giving people opportunities. So like you said, Jeff, I used to give you opportunities to get on stage. When I was doing Sunday Night Live, I gave a lot of comedians opportunities, and I still do to this day. The young comedians opportunities because everyone needs a shot at greatness, right? Why not? I just ask for you to be respectful of what you're doing. Respect the crowd, respect the show, respect the craft, and it's up to you whether or not you're going to bomb. You'll leave figuring out if you did well or not. You know what I mean? It's not up to me. You'll get the feeling.
So I got a couple of things to add to that. Mm-hmm. First question. With hosting, what in your opinion makes a great host? Because don't you think comedy clubs or some produced shows do it wrong, where they'll put the rawest guy, the newest guy, the most inexperienced person up front. And in my opinion, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I own a club as well. I own a Laughing Stock Comedy Club up in Granville, Pennsylvania.
And, wow!
Right. So I want to talk to you about being a club owner and being hit up by people and how you deal with it.
All day.
But yeah. So what makes a great host, and why do you think some of these clubs make the worst decision and put the worst people up on stage when they should maybe just be doing a guest spot?
Well, the club, it comes down to the booker. The booker has to really understand talent and understand how to conduct and how to run a show. The host is basically the quarterback of the show, right?
Right. I usually say the point guard. I say the point guard.
Right.
Right. Distributing.
Correct. Right. But you're also calling the shots, because if it's not going right as the host, depending on what kind of show it is, you may have to call audible and say, hey, we can't put this next guy next because this guy was horrible. Or you got to go out there and you got to do some time to bring back the show. So the host, first and foremost, has to be relatable to the crowd, has to understand the assignment of the crowd. And it's not about the host. It's about the show. People don't get that part. You know what I mean? The host wants to be the star. It's not really about you being a star. It's you conducting the night. It's you get your cues, you get your plays from your coach, right? The producer or whoever's running the show. And you execute. If you can't execute after a certain amount of times, guess what? You're not the host anymore. And we've cut people because of that. We've given people opportunities to host, but if you're not doing it, we got to let you go. That's what it is. You got to go and get better before we bring you back up. We can't let you host on a Friday, Saturday night, maybe on Tuesday, Wednesday, when those crowds are as light and they're not expecting a primetime lineup. But I've been in those situations where they didn't like me. It's just what it is. Your jokes aren't hitting. It's just what it is. And you got to call an audible, or you're just now bringing them right up, So but at the same time, you as a club owner or as a booker, you have to know, first and foremost, who you're putting on stage, the order of the show, and the flow of the show. Like, people book shows, they don't even attend. They're just writing names down and times next to them, and they send it off like it's a pigeon airmail. Here you go. You don't even pay attention if it made it there or not. You know what I mean? So It's like, if you're not a fan of comedy and you don't understand comedy, this is just an assignment for you. And you just fill in a Scantron. I dated myself with a Scantron. Well, you just fill it in a Scantron and send it in.
Unfortunately, I get that reference. As a host, do you prefer up top doing crowd work, or do you go into material?
I do a little bit of both. I do a little bit of both because I've been hosting so much, like, my crowd work leads into material. Like, and sometimes I'm the person because I run a club, so I'm wearing many hats. So sometimes I'm the person checking people in, and I can see every little bit of the persons or the people in the room. So I already have stuff cooked in my head that I'm going to say before I get on stage. There's certain things as a seasoned host knows they can go in and come out of, and you're just intertwining your jokes with crowd work, and it seems seamlessly because you're not really telling jokes, you're just entertaining. You get what I mean? And it's more of a conversation rather than set up, punchline, set up, tag, punchline, set up. It's that right there. When you start doing that off the top, it doesn't really give the crowd a chance to relax. You want them to be relaxed as possible before you start punching them, if that makes sense. You want them to get their guard down, feel comfortable, they feel warm, and they're laughing, giggling about just anything in particular before you go into your jokes. A lot of hosts just go right into the material, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. They haven't had their first drink yet. They're still nervous about their setting. There's somebody behind them that's breathing heavy. You got to acknowledge certain things in a room. There's certain things you got to do as a host to set the tone for the show. And I've seen it 1,000 times. If you ever been to, if you ever did auditions for like Netflix, HBO, Comedy Central, all that stuff, They put the worst possible hosts on those goddamn shows. And I told the booking agents just when I was on the show, I said, whoever this person you got hosting is so cold that everybody on this show is not going to do well. I don't care how funny they are, but because of how this show is being hosted, the crowd is not ready to be entertained. You know what I mean? Like it's not ready. It's like so. It's ass backwards for a lack of a better term. You know what I mean?
At the club that I have, either I host it or my partner hosts it, which is Rich Carucci.
Because you trust him, right?
Right. Well, Rich is the type of guy you could put him in Vietnam.
Who's that?
Rich Carucci.
All right, I don't know if I know Carucci. All right, go ahead.
He's a great host. He's fearless. He can do crowd work. He could do material. I'm the same way. You mentioned something that I relate to, is that it's your place and you're very hands on. Mm-hmm. I find it really hard sometimes to be the guy checking people in, seating people down, getting everything settled. I'm listening to make sure, is the music still on? Because there got to be music. I don't want people walking into a cold room. Okay. Right. Seating people the right way. And then people are like, well, maybe I don't want to sit here. I want to sit there. Because there's a reason for this. Because I need the back tables for latecomers. Okay. And then you got all this going on. Then you got to go up on stage and just
be funny.
Get off, read the crowd, and be funny.
Yeah, it's hard, man.
How do you do it?
I've been doing it for so long, Jeff. It's like I'm like a robot, man. It doesn't even faze me anymore. And I've alleviated myself of some things. Like I make sure there's a DJ. Right? If there's not a DJ, there's a playlist that I know that's not going to cut off because the Wi-Fi is shoddy. You know what I mean? So there's music always going to be playing off an iPad or whatever, right? The seating situation, we have a wait staff. So I literally just screamed on them on Saturday because there was a line of people waiting to be seated and they're in the back talking crazy. I'm like, hey, there's people out here that need to be seated. And they screamed at me like, you can't scream across the showroom. Well, you can't have people waiting to be seated. Because if they're waiting to be seated, guess what? The line's getting longer, and we're going to be losing time to start the show.
That's right.
So there's systems in place to make sure that it runs smooth. So even with checking people in, it's like we make sure there's a printout that's printed in alphabetical order. You know what I mean? It tells me we look and see how many's in the party. So prior to the show, if there's a large party, we know what table to sit them at. There's no confusion. There's reserve signs in the back row. Like you're saying, you don't want anyone sitting back there. We put the reserve signs on those seats just so the people who go back there know they can't sit there. Yes, sir. Okay. So do you get what I mean? It's like a lot that goes on that people don't see. There's a lot of behind the scenes things that, and we start the show and they're like, we're out of ice. I got to go run and get ice. I'm bringing in bags of ice from the deli next door. And they're like, all right, your host for the night, Jamie Roberts. I got to give the ice to the security guard, get on stage. There's a lot of things that happen, so, but it is a lot to deal with. But once you get a system in place, it starts running smoother. Do
you like being a club owner?
Yeah, I love it. How long
have you had comedy in Harlem?
3 years. We started in 2021.
And
4 years now. Yeah, now I think about 4 years in October.
And did you just change locations?
Yeah, we're on the east side. We're on the west side of Harlem. We opened up on the east side, East 117th, and then the buildings department came down on us. New York City, shout out to New York City Buildings Department. Thank you. They came down on us because we were on the second floor walk up, and they was like, "Hey, it's not ADA compliant. You need an elevator. You got to do all these different things in order for you to be legal." Even though they issued us a certificate of occupation, a letter of no objection rather, that we can operate. And then they came out and did an inspection and said, oh, no, we made a mistake. So after we dumped 2 years in there, and I'm talking about, we converted, it was an old gym. We converted an old gym into a comedy club.
Did you get a license?
Yeah, we had a liquor license and everything.
Wow.
So, we were running legit. And then the buildings department was like, hey, we fought them tooth and nail until they said, we're going to start imposing fines if you don't shut down. So, when New York City imposes fines, it's not $50. it's like $10,000. You know, it's like $15,000.
New York City does a lot of things the wrong way. The one thing they know how to do is they know how to find you.
Yeah, they know how to find you. And the thing about it is, you know, once you get fines like that, when you're going to look for a new location, they bring up your background of your business, and if you have fines, you can't sign a new lease. So we went looking, we found a new space. We're on 147th and St. Nicholas Avenue in Harlem. We signed that lease in March of last year, and we opened up May 31st of last year. So we just celebrated a year in this space on Saturday.
Yeah, I saw
location.
I saw like all the pictures. Everything. How big is the room?
We see, if you're the fire department, we see 74 people. We're doing 74 people.
And it looks like you're doing, like, you learned your lessons from observing what was going on, because it looks like you're not just doing comedy. It looks like you're doing jazz. You're doing you're doing slam poetry.
Yeah, we're doing erotic poetry. We're doing that. We're doing comedy and karaoke. You know what we did, and this is another nod to Al Morton, is ask your customers what they want, right? Ask them what's missing. You know, what kind of experience would you like coming to Comedy in Harlem? And a lot of people are like, hey, we like live music. You know, we like to hear live music. Or, you know, what else you got? I love to sing. We got karaoke. Hey, why not on an off night? Monday nights we do comedy and karaoke. We still put comics up. Newer comics come. We have an open mic on Monday. They stay and they do comedy in between the karaoke acts. And it works out great.
Oh, that is awesome.
Right. So it's kind of like you get more time, more stage time. You got a real audience there with you.
Do you remember P.D. DeBreu?
Yeah, I know P.D. Yeah. It's out of the Bronx, right.
Okay. So P.D. back in the day used to host a mic like that. And it was really one of the best mics. It would be like a music mic. And then there would be comics in between. And he really kind of I think there were like 30 acts in total. So it was a long show. But when you got up, people were there. Like, you had real audience because they were going for the music. And then he'd have 2 or 3 singers, then he'd have a comic, then he'd have a singer or two. And you really were able to get something out of it. And it was really a great vibe in the room for the mic.
So, and the thing about it is, the key thing you said was an audience. So when you go to these open mics, it's just a room full of comedians, right? But if you're going to a space that you know there's actually going to be an audience, you can really try out some material to see how funny you are, how well it's being taken, and it starts to grow. More people want to come out and do the mic, and then you want to come out and do comedy and karaoke. And it's a good time, man. I mean, who doesn't want to sing Michael Jackson and Prince while they're drunk? You know what I mean? It's a good time, and I'm going to tell you, it's a lot of women that come out to comedy and karaoke. The other thing... That's
always good because it's going to attract men.
There you go. And the other thing is, you mentioned jazz. We're located on St. Nick's Avenue, where historically it was a corridor for live music back in the days. So during the Harlem Renaissance. So there used to be a space called St. Nick's Jazz Pub, where everybody played, from Stevie Wonder to Bound Kate, everyone. You know what I mean? Everyone played there. And so there's no space like that anymore. And so we're trying to recreate that environment for people to come and actually record, so they don't have to go all the way down to the Village, the Blue Note, the Cafe Wa, things like that. They have a space here. Before it was the Cellar, it used to be Village Underground. And that was a big space as well as far as performances. I used to go there on Sundays after my show and just hang out because it was just the place to be, But yeah, that's what we're doing. We're doing a little bit of everything. And, once the club gets popular, then, I don't have a problem doing it. It's still a comedy club. We still run shows every weekend. That's not an issue. We still have headliners that come in and do shows, but during the week, why not?
It's interesting that you do music in Harlem, because you mentioned the Harlem Renaissance. And Sean, I'm not familiar if you're familiar with the Harlem Renaissance, but in my opinion, I think the Harlem Renaissance is really kind of the genesis of the civil rights movement, because it's the first time blacks in America start to assert themselves a little bit more. They want to become more. They want to assert themselves in literature, arts, and music.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was highlighted in Harlem. That's right.
That's right. And then you had your different political beliefs. You had, I think it was was it accommodation? Was that like, you know what I'm talking about, Jamie? You had W.E.B. Du Bois, and okay. So, but it all derived from this scene that was going in the 1920s. Okay, which was kind of like the cool time in America, although it was built on a false premise, and the false premise is the economy. Okay, but it's a good time for 9 years, and then 1929 you had the stock market. But everything kind of starts there, and so it seems like a natural fit that you would do some type of music over there. And here's something I saw: you have a guy who, when I first started comedy with. You have Rashad Bashir, I saw was hosting.
Yeah, that's my guy, man.
Oh, he's one of the sweetest, nicest guys you're going to meet, and it's very funny. Like my son is in college, and so he'll watch. Everything is on the phone. He's watching everything on the phone. He goes, "Hey, did you ever see this skit, Dad?" And it's these guys doing Stephen A. Smith. I'm like, I go, I think I know this imbecile. And sure enough, it's Rashad with a fucking spot-on Stephen A. I'm like, I know him, Ryan. I know him. And all of a sudden, now I got a little bit of clout in my son's life.
Yeah, they did that show live at my club. They did. It's called Last Take. Yeah, it's called Last Take. They do First Take on ESPN.
Yeah.
So the name of the show they do is called Last Take. And they did it live at the club, I think maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
It's really funny. It's really funny.
And he's a talented guy. He's very talented.
And also one of the nice guys doing this.
In comedy, yeah. There's only a few of us. So
let's switch gears here for a minute. How did you get your start in radio, and what did you do in radio?
Oh man, radio fell in my lap. So I was doing comedy full time, right? And at the time, my brand manager, she was like, "Hey, I can't work with you as much anymore. I'm starting a new gig at the new radio station in New York City, new R&B station." I was like, "There's no new R&B station." I thought she was bullshit. And she's like, "No, there's a new R&B station starting, and they put me up to do promotion." So I said, "All right, cool. Hold on a minute. Can you turn that down, JJ? Thank you, my son." So at the time, I was like, "Your last job then is to get me an interview there at the new radio station." So she got me an interview there. I interviewed for the street team, right? Mind you, I have an accounting degree with 15 years experience, but I just wanted to get my foot in the door. And I met with the head of promotions. She was like, "Oh, you're too talented to be on the street team. Why don't you go talk to somebody in sales, the sales manager?" Sat down and talked to the sales manager for some time, and he offered me a position. He's like, "Hey, have you ever done sales before?" I said, "No, I never done sales before." He's like, "You're a comedian. You sell yourself on stage every night." So I said, "Hey, good point. Let's see how this thing turns out." And that was 2014. So I've been doing it for over 11 years now.
And you're still doing it?
Still doing it. Still doing sales. I worked my way up from an account executive to sales manager at Radio 103.9. And then I moved over here. I'm on Hot 97 and WBLS, one of the two biggest stations here in New York City.
Did you start a radio station?
Yeah, 108 Soul. Yeah, I started 108 Soul. I started that during the pandemic.
That's right. Nikki was on that.
Yeah, it's still going now.
When do you get a chance to relax? When do you get a chance to watch? Because I know you're a big Knicks guy too.
I don't. You said the Knicks, right? So yeah. I don't. I don't like to watch the Knicks because it's like a curse. You know what I mean? It's like a curse. I'd rather watch the highlights. We did 2 Knicks watch parties at the club, and they lost both games. Both games. And I said, "The hell with this? We're not doing it anymore." Huh?
It was a game 1 and 2?
Yes. I said, "We're not doing it anymore." We're not doing this anymore. And plus, those were off nights. You know what I mean? So it was okay to do it.
Well, that was on game one was on a Wednesday, because here's how I know. I don't know if you know, I do live radio as well. I'm on 101.5 FM with Steve Trevelise. It's Jersey's biggest radio station. Every Wednesday from 9 to 11. And so we're in the studio and we have the game on in the background. And there's about 3 minutes to go, maybe less. 14-point lead. And I'm getting texts from people saying, "Sweep, we're sweeping them," you know. And then the next thing you know, today Tibbs gets fired.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And the thing about it, like we had the watch party game one, and the guy, 2-3 minutes left. He left with his girl. "Hey, man, I'm going to head out now." I was like, "You never leave." That's until it's 0-0 on the clock. Where are you going? "I got to head out, man. She wants to get something to eat. We're going to do this." He texts me 15 minutes later, like, "Oh, my God." I was like, "I told you. You could have never left. What is wrong with you?" But it's the Knicks, man. The Knicks are going to find a way to nick. That's how I always say. It was a great run, but, my grandmother, and go back to watching games, I don't really sit down and watch games. I'm probably on my phone. It's in the background. Like, I don't, I used to grab some wings and beer and sit down and have some time and, actually watch a game. Same with football, right? But I have so many things that's going on in my life personally and professionally that I don't have time to sit down and actually enjoy a game. And back in the 90s, when the Knicks were the Knicks, I used to do that. And my grandmother at the time told me, she put this in my head, and I'll never forget. She was like, "Why are you watching millionaires work?" And I was like, I never thought about it like that. Why are you watching millionaires work? And it's like, I'm not even a millionaire. What makes me think? Huh?
It's a Mr. Bronx Tale over here.
Oh, yeah. but that's
the thing you're quoting.
Right. So, but that's the thought process of like, how dare you find some time to relax when you haven't earned it? They've earned that.
A couple of things before we let you go. Because again, there's so many things to touch on, Jamie, about. And one of them, you're just like me, you're an actor, you're in SAG. Okay. How did you first of all, how did you get your hours for SAG? What did you wind up doing? Is it the commercials?
That's my guy Chuck Hudson. No, my guy Chuck Hudson wrote a script. He was SAG and he wrote me into the script. So once you get written into the script like that, you just have to apply. I became SAG eligible. I had 2 vouchers, but that just helped me get into SAG. You know what I mean? Once that happened, the whole doors of everything opened up. I mean, like, I didn't know the importance of it until it actually, it came down to it. So during COVID, I made a ton of money during COVID because nobody else was vaccinated. So I was working on Godfather Harlem season 2 for like every day. I would drive to Brooklyn and they would pay you to get, they would pay you for your COVID test. And they were paying you for the hours that you were there. They was paying you for overtime. And I did everything from stand-in work to being bumpies, right-hand mob, whatever it is, to be, all types of roles in that second season. It was great, but once you get into SAG, it's like, all right, now I've arrived.
I think it's almost the opposite. I think once you get in, then you got to kind of like, you can't do like the discovery investigation shit anymore. The stuff that maybe $300 to $500 a day because I mean, you could.
You could. You do FICO. What is it? FICOR, right? What is it? FICOR? What is it called when you do both? The hybrid?
You're not supposed to.
Anyway, like I said
when you pay your union dues, you're right, and that's the whole reason why if say you even took like background work, you're getting paid probably 2 times more than someone who does not have a SAG card. So the first, what got me into SAG was doing The Irishman. I never bring this up on the show. Okay, I'm doing The Irishman, and we have a friend named Terry McNeely, and he was doing
Terry, yeah.
Okay, he was doing some background work, but he is not in SAG. I did not know that. Okay, at least at the time he wasn't. So I go to sit with him. There was a lot of comics. Mick the Flow I saw working on as an extra. Okay, so I went to go sit with Terry to have lunch. Right, we were taking a break. I'm having lunch in this tent, and a couple of guys I'm working with are like, "Jeff, come here for a second. I come up like, I can't sit here. I go, yeah, but I know this guy. He's a comic friend of mine. And they're like, no, you can't. This is why we fought for this. So we could have this space. We have this food. It was different food. It was different food wagons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. Yeah. You get treated a little bit different. Well, a lot different. A lot different.
Yeah, well, I arrived to the set one day, and first day on the set, and I see all these people. I didn't know where I'm going, and they treat me like shit. Like, oh, your name's not on the list. I'm like, I have to be on the list. I've been in touch with production all week. My agency's been sending me all this stuff. I had to go. I had to go to what's that studio in Queens?
Kaufman.
Silvertone.
Silver Cup. Silver Cup. I had to go there. I had to go, or Simon, I think. I had to go there for stills. I had to go there for costume. There was a lot of shit that I had to do prior to getting on the set. And as soon as they see that, like, I'm not an extra, a featured role on that day's shoot, all of a sudden, that guy's attitude changes real fast. And then the PA comes and gets me, and I'm not with the regular PA. And, it's like I'm not used to being treated well. Okay. Even by myself, no one treats me good. All right. The name of our show is Who's Your Band, Jamie? It's Who's Your Band. Is music important to you?
Yeah, music is very important to me, man. That's why I started a radio station. I mean,
what do you like? Who do you listen to?
I like R&B and hip hop. R&B, classic hip hop.
So growing up in Long Island, what did you listen to?
Oh, it was De La Soul. I grew up in Amityville. So De La Soul was the group with me. Yeah, De La Soul, me, myself, and I. Rakim, of course. EPMD, as far as hip hop is concerned.
Are you a New Jack Swing type of guy?
Not as much. Teddy Riley, that's a lot of dancing. So it's like, I don't have that in me anymore. Maybe when I was younger.
You didn't wear a lot of big clothes. And who was the guy on? What was that guy? Kadeem something.
Kadeem Hardison.
Yeah, you didn't just like Kadeem Hardison in
You're talking about a different. Oh, you're talking about a different world.
He's a guy from a different world. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Kadeem Hardison with the flip glasses and everything. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I see you being like Kadeem Hardison.
Yeah, it was a time, man. It was a time. I'm 48 years old, so not to age myself, but yeah, those were my years. Those were my years. White man.
We're the same exact age.
Well, there you go. So those are what we call the golden years, right?
Oh yeah, without question.
Sean has a theory that a guest of ours once said. Sean, who was it? Was it Billy Vera?
Oh, it's the truth. We talk about this all the time.
Tell Jamie what he said and ask Jamie the question.
This guy wrote a very popular song back in the 80s, and he said,
in this moment,
the music that you will listen to the most in your entire life is the music that you listened to when you were 13 years old. So now think of it now. So 35 years later, think about the music that you listened to when you were at 12, 13, even 14 years old. Is that still the predominant music that you listen to?
That maybe from like 13 to about 17. Yeah, about that era. Yeah.
Your favorite era, right? Yeah. So that's where I kind of fall into the same wheelhouse too. Like I have a very eclectic musical taste, but it all stems from the main part of it comes from that era, from like 88 to 90.
Right. I grew up in Long Island, so it was a lot of different types of music that we listened to. It was a diverse high school that I went to. I graduated from Amityville High School. So it's the palette of music the playlist, I should say, that I have is extensive. So it goes from I tease my daughter all the time because we could be in Forever 21 and I'm singing the songs that are on the speakers that are playing through the store. And she's like, don't embarrass me. How do you know Madonna? Who doesn't know Madonna? You know what I mean? Who doesn't who doesn't know those groups? Boy George, who doesn't know that stuff? Wham, who doesn't know that stuff? Anyway. But yeah, so it's different thing.
Good music, but I agree with that statement because there are two things. When I think about my childhood, there are two groups and songs that really stand out to me. One, I remember, I think the first one I kind of felt was like a real, like legit song. It wasn't like a little kid song. I love The Love You
Glenn
Saved.
Miller.
No, fuck you, Glenn Miller. I love The Love You Saved by the Jackson 5. I thought it had I still to this day think it has one of the best bass lines I've ever heard in a song. Okay. This song has never gotten old for me. And then, of course, it was Kiss, Rock and Roll All Night. And then listening to that first Kiss Alive album, which is just totally got me into rock and metal, but I still love the Jackson 5, Michael Jackson. I still will go down swinging saying Michael Jackson was the best entertainer of all time. Okay.
Entertainer, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, just love the guy. And Jamie, tell us about what you got going on, what's coming up, and how people could get tickets to Comedy in Harlem and what nights you're operating. Just give us a little bit about that so we can promote you a little bit.
Well, thank you. Well, Comedy Harlem, we're open 6 nights a week. We usually dark either like a Tuesday night, like tonight we had open mic, that was it. But you can find out everything at comedyinharlem.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at comedyinharlem. Me, myself, personally, I'm working on an album right now, which should have been out in February, but I've been bullshitting and kicking it down the road for the longest. Not happy with some of the stuff I've recorded. That should be done by the summer, hopefully by my birthday, August 15th, to get that done. The club itself is growing. We're having headliners come through. We have Mark Vieira coming through for Father's Day weekend. We have Flame Monroe coming through. We have who else is on the bill? We have Omar Gooden, who's an actor, comedian. It's coming through, but it's just as you know, as a club owner, it's kind of finding the next names who are not going to beat you over the head to do a weekend, but are going to attract some people who want to pay to see them perform. And then I don't know, how big is your club, Jeff? How many seats?
It varies. I mean, we'll go a little small because we're in a hotel. Okay.
Okay.
So we can do a smaller room. Like this past weekend, we had Vishnu Vaka and Gerald Benford up there. So they were in
the Jersey Comics, right? I know them. The Jersey Comics.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Vishnu has been in the city. Like he just recently, about a year ago, got passed over at the Cellar. I don't know if he's getting spots, but I know he was doing pretty well. So we did about maybe 50 for him. Okay, so we were able to do it in a small room. This weekend we have John Fugelsang and Frank Conniff, and a little bit bigger names. So we have it in a little bit bigger room, and that room's going to fit about 90.
Gotcha. So like some of the bigger names, they won't do the room because it's too small.
Well, we do have the capacity where we can move it into a ballroom and fit about 350. But also some big names, guys I know from New York City comedy, which is an advantage of working there, and they'll come in and they'll help you out. Like guys like Brian Scalaro and Florentine. Florentine's come through a few times for me.
That's great.
So they'll give you like a good door deal.
Right. And those are the challenges that we have, is that some of the bigger names, they see the club, they love the concept of it, but it's like, hey, I got to do 5 shows to really make some money. It's like, no, we'll just do a weekend. We'll figure it out. And some people just come through and do it off the strength. It's a challenging thing, but at the same time, it's a good problem to have when people want to work with you.
It's good. Listen, guys, check out Comedy in Harlem. And what's the website?
comedyinharlem.com. You go right there, get your tickets, get all the information. We got a yacht party that's happening this Saturday. Tickets is only $50. It's Comedians Yacht Party, leaving from FDR on 23rd. Food is included. It's always a good time.
Wow. Yeah. See, that's good thinking out of the box, man.
You got to think forward, man. You got to think forward. You can't keep doing what everyone else is doing.
That's why you're a successful guy, and you'll continue to be successful. Listen, man, we wish you nothing but the best. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And
welcome,
guys,
brother.
Check out Comedy in Harlem, comedyinharlem.com. Okay.
Hit me when you're in town, bro.
Hey,
Hit me when you're in town, Jeff, man. I love you, man. Appreciate you, brother.
You're the best. Thank you.
Pleasure meeting you too, Sean.
You too, man. I appreciate it.
No
Sean,
doubt.
what do you got coming up?
I am headlining Catch a Rising Star July 12th and 13th in Princeton, and I think me and Jamie should set up a turning 49 weekend, since I'm turning 49 on August 13th. I think we should take over that. I think we should take over comedy in Harlem that weekend and do all jokes about how our bodies are fucking broken. That's what we should do. That's what we got coming up. But thank you again for coming on the show. It was a lot of fun.
You're welcome, man. Dope.
And Adam can ever get this thing out on time, you catch me actually this Saturday night. I will be at the St. George Theater in Staten Island. 1900,
yeah, have fun with it, man.
1,900 seats. I'm there with my pal Gaspar Renzazzo. It's going to be great.
Let me just get one thing out of the way here, Jeff. You got more of a chance of me waking up Jamie's color and Jamie waking up my color tomorrow morning than you think of Adam getting that fucking episode out before Friday to sell tickets for that show.
Oh, that's a challenge.
Challenge. The voice of God. Challenge.
God has spoken.
Guys, this has been Who's Your Band. Continue to subscribe, follow us. Suggestions, we're anything you need, man. Catch us the next time. Take care, everybody. Thank you, Jamie.
Dope.